Hello, everyone, and welcome to a webinar on Landis Contact Center for Microsoft Teams. Thanks for checking out the product. And what I'm going to do today is just kind of give you a walkthrough of the product from start to finish. We're going to touch on some of the features that it includes, the look and feel of the product, and a little bit on the technical or the architecture of the product as well. So we developed Contact Center for Microsoft Teams as a way to transform customer relations and interactions and make sure that your agents, your managers, and everyone in your environment has the tools they need to handle those incoming calls and manage the contact center well. So let's get started. First of all, just a little bit about Landis Technologies for those of you that are not aware. I'm sure many of you are. But Landis is a technology company located in Pennsylvania here in the US. We really focus on developing solutions that fit in and help complete Microsoft communication platforms. We've been doing this for a number of years, and some of our other products you may be familiar with is the Attendant Console, Attendant Pro. We designed that several years back, and that's been a major focus for us, as well as call recording and some other products. So we have a long and deep partnership with Microsoft. We've appreciated that relationship. We are a Gold Microsoft partner. And we really focus on helping complete the Microsoft environment for people that are deploying Teams and need some of these areas completed in their environment. So for today, we're going to be talking exclusively about Contact Center. So a few things that you'll notice in the design of Landis Contact Center and features that were very central for our design and vision. One is simplicity. We want this product to be very simple, very straightforward, not only to deploy and set up, but also then for the end user to operate and become familiar with. I think you'll notice just the ease of setup, the menus, everything. We really design it with simplicity in mind. You know, as we started to create this contact center over the last couple of years, we noticed that a lot of the products on the marketplace seem to be overly complex. A lot of products required tons of customization, and it seemed that Contact Center in general was very focused on highly customized setups. And we really want to streamline that. We want to make this something that anyone can set up, anyone can get operational, and really cut down on a lot of that deployment time that contact centers typically demand. So as I'm mentioning that, one of the things that really plays into the simplicity is the architecture of how this all sets up. And we'll get into the architecture a little bit later. But just to highlight, this is a platform that is built completely within the Teams platform. We use the communication APIs from Microsoft, and we build completely on top of the existing Microsoft calling and direct routing trunks. So we're built right inside of the Teams app. We're built on top of Microsoft, as opposed to perhaps some connected solutions that may be out there in the marketplace that rely on routing calls to an external service to achieve contact center functionality and then back into the Teams environment. That type of architecture requires a lot more setup time, a little bit more complex, and there's a few more pieces in the chain. Whereas if we can just build this right inside of Teams, it simplifies the whole process. So simple is a major focus for us. You'll notice also the familiarity of this product as we go through. It's going to look and feel exactly like Teams, and that obviously is by design. We don't want to brand this as our own Landis product. We want it to look and feel exactly like Teams. If your end users, if your managers can operate our product without realizing they're using anything other than Teams, we'll have done our job. That's what we're shooting for, and we want it to really look and feel like the rest of their workflow that they are familiar with. Powerful feature list that is included right out of the box, and we'll go over some of those features as we go along here and show you visually what they look like. We're not necessarily pitching Landis Contact Center for Teams as a fully custom contact center, but we do include a wide gamut of features right within the product and features that don't require customization. So we'll go over that and show you what those are here in a moment. For the features that maybe we don't include, there's also opportunity for an open integration with your workflows and with your current environment. So Things like, let's say, for example, some reports that we don't include, that some highly specialized reports that you need for your industry. Chances are you'll be able to do that using Power BI, or pulling data in from a custom CRM database that you have. You could do so using Power Automate and other processes that you may have in your environment. It integrates well and it plays well with other processes that you have. And then lastly, and I touched on this a bit already, but it's built on top of the Trusted Team solution, hosted in Azure, fully cloud hosted, something that just plugs in, gives the features that you need for contact center, and just works. We really want to give companies the feeling that that they can just go into Teams and turn on the contact center functionality. So that's really what we're shooting for. So I'm just going to give you a kind of an overview of the features that we include in Landis Contact Center. So we kind of have it broken down by persona that you may have. We have the customer, the agent, the manager, and the administrator. So first of all, the customer's experience. Very common experience, as you would expect a customer's journey into a contact center to be. They're calling in, they're hearing the menu options, the menu prompts, they're pressing the appropriate buttons on their keypad, they're hearing welcome messages, music on hold. They can have an announcement in the queue that lets them know what their position is in queue, so they know approximately how long they have to wait. And as very common in call centers these days, the option for them to request a courtesy callback if they don't want to wait. So if they're in the middle of something and want to not wait on hold, they can just request a callback, and when it's their turn in line, an agent can return their call. So pretty standard customer experience. Now, from the agent side of things, and I'm not going to touch on all of these. We're going to go through each one of these, the agent, the manager, and the administrator more specifically, and look at the visuals of what this looks like. But this is just kind of an overview of some of the features. So the agents have the tools they need to handle these incoming calls. First of all, they have a nice dashboard in their Teams app. They have the ability to easily sign in and out of the appropriate call queues. They can see the CRM information presented to them for the calls that they're handling, wrap-up questions, analytics showing them their call history and their performance statistics. Of course, policy call recording, we'll touch on that more in depth, but recording can be set for them however is necessary. They can easily see their call history as well as abandoned calls, callers that need calls returned, so they can easily see the calls that need to be returned and mark them as completed. And they can change their status to on break, or change their status so they don't take calls momentarily, and of course sign out. And management can track that status and see what the day has looked like for that agent. All right, for the managers, they have all the tools they need to manage the contact center. First of all, the ability to monitor live call activity. This is an important one for a contact center. The manager can see all calls currently in progress, agent status, who's on the line, who's idle. They can easily barge in or join into a call or listen in to a call that's in progress. They can also see sentiment analysis showing them at a glance how the call is going. Is it going well? Is it going poor? And they can use that as a guide to decide if they need to barge in or listen in. So I'll show you what that looks like. That's a very interesting tool. And then, of course, the reports to monitor or look at the historic data in the contact center. Summaries of abandoned calls, queue summaries showing activity by time of day, agent summaries showing what all of our agents have been up to, and just an overview of their activity. They can see the sentiment analysis, the call queues by hour, wrap-up question, the answers that are coming in from the agents, obviously portals for listening to those call recordings and seeing the agent's activity and status throughout the day. And then administration, I won't go too in-depth in, but the administrators and the managers of the contact center will have a very clean and easy to operate portal for setting up the contact center, establishing the call queues, creating wrap-up questions and wall boards, assigning access to the right personnel in the contact center, and just managing all of this in a very, very straightforward and intuitive portal for them. So I think the administration side will really appreciate what they're given and how clean and precise it is. And we'll show you a little bit of the visuals of what that looks like. Okay, so before we get into the specific components or the specific features and the look and feel of it, I just want to kind of lay out some of the products that Landis has and that Landis Technologies is offering. So for today, we're talking about Contact Center, and we'll go over that in depth. Contact Center being the product that manages those customer interactions and those incoming calls, outbound calls, and gives the contact center the tools it needs to operate smoothly. We also have an IVR designer. The IVR designer is included within the contact center. Have to excuse me here. I hit the wrong button. Just jump back. So the IVR designer is included within the contact center, but we also offer that as its own product. So if you needed just an IVR designer that gives you a more intuitive way to set up the inbound calls, there's a number of different things you can do. You can use data-driven or data dips to control the call flow and making sure the caller is presented with the right options. Very easy to set up using text to voice for setting up that IVR voice and presenting the caller with clean, precise options. That is easy to manage and change on the fly if need be. So IVR Designer is another component that is available by itself, but it is also included within Contact Center. So another component is the policy call recording. Once again, this is available within Contact Center, or rather it's included with Contact Center. But if you had a subset of users in your environment that needed just call recording, they didn't need full Contact Center functionality, call recording from Microsoft Teams is available as its own product from Landis, and it's something that you could provision to just those agent or just those users that need it. So another piece. And coming soon, the attendant console. And I know there's a lot of anticipation around this piece as well. We have been very active and we've been leaders in the attendant console space for quite some time. This is one we are as well eager to get set up. As of right now, we do not have the APIs we need from Microsoft to control calls in a way that is appropriate or is needed from an attendant or a receptionist. So things like consult transfer, putting calls on and off a hold, stacking multiple calls on hold, blind transfer to voicemail. There's a lot of different tasks that are essential to an attendant or a receptionist operation that the APIs do not allow for yet. We are hoping Microsoft grants those APIs shortly. They claim they're working on them, and we've been seeing some progress, but we just don't have what we need yet. So the attendant console coming soon. The Contact Center, IVR Designer, and Policy Recording are currently in public preview, and they're ready to be set up in your environment. You can start testing. We expect to be GA shortly. We're just waiting for Microsoft to close some of the APIs that they've granted on these pieces. Obviously, we need those APIs to be closed before we go GA, just so we don't risk them changing anything that would break functionality on our side. But as soon as they do so, we'll be GA. We do anticipate that to happen in the very near future. But in any regard, the products are ready to be tested. You can set them up in your environment. You can start getting a feel for the queue setup, adding agents, and start putting your contact center through the paces. And we do expect to be GA shortly. One side note, the recording policy, the call recording policy, that is GA now. So that is available now. If you had someone that is looking for just recording that product, we have all the APIs. The APIs are closed, and that's ready to go. Okay, enough of the technical. Let's jump into the visual of what this Landis Contact Center looks like. So we're going to start from the agent's perspective and kind of see what a day in the life of an agent looks like and what they can expect their operation to look like. So first of all, the agent has this dashboard that you can see as kind of their home screen inside of Teams. And as you'll notice, this is the agent's Teams app. Landis Contact Center just shows up as a tab inside of their Teams app. So that makes it very user-friendly for them to just simply open Teams and Contact Center is right there. And as you can see from all appearances, this looks like it is part of Teams. And again, that is very much by design. Another nice thing is the sign-in or the contact center functionality will follow them wherever they can sign into Teams, especially in light of recent global events with COVID-19. If you have a group of agents that now needs to work from home, as long as they have a device that they can sign into the Teams app, they have Contact Center with them. And that Contact Center functionality will follow them wherever they sign in. Managers that are on the road and they want to pick up their iPhone and look at some reports as to how the Contact Center is doing that day, they can simply open the Teams app on their iPhone and they have Contact Center functionality with them. So very simplified. There's no additional apps needed for the agents, for the managers outside of Teams. Okay, so also here on the dashboard, you'll notice the Open Agent Panel button, and that is where they're going to handle the incoming calls. So the agent panel can sit inside of the Teams app, as you see right here on the right-hand side, or it can snap out and sit alongside of the Teams app. And this is typically preferred by agents that are handling phone calls. It allows them to multitask. They can then use the Teams app itself for things like chat or files, or looking at other teams. And it just allows for a little bit better multitasking. So a nice clean window for managing and receiving those incoming calls. You'll also notice they can easily sign in and out of the appropriate queues. So queues that they're responsible for, they can jump in, they can sign out when they're done. They can also change their status to away or rather on break if they need to step away momentarily. And as I mentioned earlier, of course, management can report on that agent status throughout the day. So as they're handling phone calls, they will see calls come in to that agent panel or the Contact Center agent panel. They can see the clean call controls on the left-hand side, the caller ID. And here on the right-hand side is the CRM information that is presented as a call is ringing. The example you're seeing on your screen there is Dynamic CRM, but we actually have a few different connectors built for things like Salesforce and ServiceNow as well. Now, if you do have some sort of custom database that you're pulling from, perhaps you're not using one of these common CRMs, this canvas here can essentially work as a blank slate for you to tie in to whatever database you have. And you would use Power Apps, you would use Power Automate to hook into your database. So any database that Power Apps can hook into, you can provision that data inside of the agent panel for your agents to see as they're answering those phone calls. And for your common CRMs, the connectors we have built, they are two-way read and write. So not only can they see the CRM information from that customer's account, but they can also make data entries here, meeting notes or call notes and account changes that they can make here and save back to that customer's CRM account. When the call is finished, the agent is presented with some wrap-up questions, or you have the option to present your agent with wrap-up questions. How did the call go? What product were they calling in regard to? Were they satisfied? Or maybe rank the customer satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 5. So just some simple questions that you can ask your agents to gain an idea of the call content and what types of calls the agents are handling. Again, this is not a customer survey. This is questions you're asking your agents when they're finishing up the phone call. It will hold them at this screen until they've done their data entry, and when they click finish, it makes them available for the next incoming call. You also notice a recording button. The recording policy, as I mentioned, can be set on an individual basis. So you can set the recording policy for each queue or even each individual as is appropriate. So you may have one queue that has always on recording policy, but then you may have a separate queue that, let's say, for example, needs to take credit card numbers or other sensitive information. You may give the members of that queue the permission to pause the recording and resume it when they need to. So whether it's always on, the ability to stop, on-demand recording, or simply turning it off, you have the ability to assign the exact recording policy that you need. All right, and then when they're finished with the phone call, it takes them back to a blank agent panel and makes them available for the next incoming call. And again, back in their dashboard, they do have the ability to see their call history. They can see, I beg your pardon, I jumped on the wrong slide there. Let me just jump down here. They can see their call history. They can see how they rank among their colleagues. They can even jump in and see some of the missed calls. They can, calls that they've been missing, abandoned calls, as well as a report showing them callers that requested a callback. And then, of course, they can easily mark them as completed as well. Okay, that's pretty much it for the agent. A very simplified process for them, something that plugs right into their Teams app. And as I mentioned, it's going to look and feel to them like just a continuation of Teams. And your learning curve when you roll this out to your agents will be minimal. Okay, next we're going to look at what a manager experiences. So a manager experiences a lot the same in terms of this dashboard that sits inside of Teams, shows them some of their favorite call charts and statistics that they can see. But then the manager has the ability to navigate through a lot of different reports, as we can see here at the top, and jump into some of the different information that they have access to. So the first one is a live calls report. Obviously, a manager needs to be able to monitor call activity as it's taking place and see what's currently happening in the call center. So here we see a list of calls currently in progress. We can see the agents that are handling these calls, the caller ID. We can see ones that are in progress or ringing. I don't have it pictured here, but there's also another icon for showing if they're in the wrap-up phase, so the manager can tell if that agent's going to be available shortly. And then they can expand any of these records and they can see even more data. So they can see if the customer has been put on hold, if so, how long. They can also see the sentiment analysis chart. This is a very interesting feature. So sentiment analysis is using Microsoft Cognitive Services to listen to this phone call, and Cognitive Services will be giving a score to the manager every so many seconds and giving them an indication of how this call is going. Is it going positive? Well, is it neutral, or is it going poorly? Is it negative? Is it picking up on negative sentiment? That information will be displayed here for the manager to see. In addition to that, they also have a scrolling transcription below the sentiment tracker that just gives them some samples of the sentences that are being used and the sentiment or the transcription that's happening in that phone call. So not only can they see a summary of how the call is going, they can see specific text. This is useful for managers that are overseeing, even if it's just a handful of agents, even 5 agents that are on the call at one time. The manager, it's not realistic of the manager's time to go down through and listen to each one of those phone calls and see how the calls are going. Instead, at a glance, they can look at the sentiment chart and have an indication if the call is going well or not. And if it's not going well, at that point, they can simply click the button to barge in or listen in. But again, not realistic for a manager to do that with every phone call. And that's why the sentiment chart is valuable for them being able to, just see what's happening and have a better judge of what's happening in the contact center. Okay, moving on. There's another report here that allows the manager to move agents around in queue. And I apologize, I don't believe this video is playing, but okay, I'll talk you through it. Yeah, this video is a little jerky for some reason. The long and the short of it is we looked at earlier how an agent can sign in and out of queues as they need to and as they are instructed to do so. This simply highlights that a manager can observe queues that maybe are falling behind. Maybe there's a longer wait time than they'd like. They can go in and they can handpick agents to add to that queue and force agents into the queue. So not only does the manager, or not only do the agents have the ability to sign in and out of queue, management can force them in and out of queues as they need and as they direct the contact center. So sorry about the visual there, but you kind of get the picture. All right, all calls detail. This is just a broad report that covers all historic data in the contact center. So we can filter this down by agent, by phone number, by queue. We can look at any custom range of dates. I can look at just earlier today, or I can look at today 2 years ago. It's easy for us to sift through all call history and find a specialized report that shows all only the calls that we want to see. And once again, we can expand any of these call records. We can see more information about that specific call record. We can play back the recording. So the recording is right there, and we can just click to play back the audio. And we see a summary of the sentiment chart as well. So at a glance, we can expand that call and just see how it went for the caller and the agent. Abandoned calls report allows the manager to see all calls that are not being answered, agent or callers that are hanging up in queue, average abandoned rates, abandoned times, and obviously all the details surrounding calls that are not being connected to agents. Agent summary report. This is a nice, simple report that at a glance the manager can see the activity for all their agents, how many calls they've been taking, how many calls they've been missing, inbound, outbound, average handle times, average response times. Are they putting callers on hold frequently? If so, how long? So just a basic report that shows kind of a summary of what those agents have been up to. Wrap-up questions. We talked about those earlier. This is where the manager can easily see the reports for those wrap-up questions. So as the answers come in from the agents, management can report on that and look at all those answers as they come in. Call queues by hour allows for us to see a summary of what time of day activity is the highest. This is an important report for staffing a contact center, making sure you have adequate assistance at the right time of day. We can look at 4th of July weekend last year, and we can see what the call history was and what the busyness of the contact center was at various times of day throughout the weekend. And we can use that as a guide for staffing our contact center this weekend. So just an example. And then lastly, there's a wallboard that is pretty straightforward. It shows the different queues and a summary of activity for those queues. How many callers are waiting, how many agents are connected, calls taken so far today, and handle times. So this can be displayed on a wallboard in the environment if you'd like for all agents to look up and see. Or you can make this available as you see it here inside the dashboard for each agent. So they can just have a tab where they click on to see the wallboard at the top, and you can make it available to them there as well. Okay, that pretty much covers an overview anyway of what a manager's experience looks like. So now we're going to get into the administrator side of things, and perhaps just slightly more technical, not too technical. I'm going to start by just looking at the architecture for this contact center. How does this whole thing work, and how is it driven? Okay, so right here is your Teams phone system. We have a resource account, or a bot, if you want to call it that, but it's a resource account that sits within your Teams phone system. So as calls come in from whether it's PSTN calling, direct routing, internal calls, whatever the process, they're pointed towards that resource account. From there, our resource account communicates with our contact center services that are in Azure. So this piece here is in Azure. It communicates with the services in Azure. In turn, it will direct the APIs to handle that call in the appropriate fashion, playing the right menu prompts, the welcome messages, the hold music, timing out to the correct agents, and making sure the call is sent through the proper queue channels and reaches the right destination, all while it reports on the activity of that caller while they're waiting in queue. So it's very important to note, and this is really what sets Landis Contact Center for Teams apart from just about anyone else in the marketplace. We are not routing your calls out to some other service to achieve this functionality. These calls remain at all times within your Teams phone system, and rather it's simply instantaneous signaling and secure signaling that takes place between the contact center services here hosted in Azure and the APIs to direct those phone calls as they need to be directed according to the settings you have in place. Very simple architecture, very easy to set up, and we'll look at the setup of this in a moment. There is also the recording component, the recording files. Once the recording file is closed, that recording file is stored in our Azure service here as well for playback and for access later. Now, the recording files themselves, you actually have the option, if you wish, to store them in your own Azure blob instead of in ours. So it doesn't matter whether it's in your Azure or ours. You have the option to do either. We include storage with Contact Center for those files, but depending on the industry or the country or region, you may be required to store them in your own, and you're certainly able to do that. And you don't sacrifice any playback functionality or any features of the Contact Center in doing so. And then obviously in Azure is where all the dashboards, the wall boards, everything, the reports, all of that is generated here in Azure for your managers and admins to see. Okay, so very simple architecture. What this means, what deployment of a contact center like this looks like is very simple and straightforward. So first of all, you're going to start by creating a new instance of Contact Center in our service. You're going to give your tenant and organization a name, and you're going to give our resource account permissions to operate in your environment. And once you've done that, you essentially have your contact center, and that literally is a 5-minute process. Now, once you have your contact center created, there will be some, obviously you'll need to manage the settings, you'll need to add your agents to it and build your queues the way you want them. But as far as deploying the contact center, this is truly something that you're going to do in an afternoon. It's not going to be a long, drawn-out 6-week process or anything like that. So some of the things, once you have your contact center created, some of the things you'll need to set up is obviously adding your users, assigning them the right roles and skills. You can rank your agents based on various skills as you add them to the contact center in order to create skills-based routing. You can, just go back here. You can also create your business hours, audio prompts, wrap-up questions, wall boards, things like that. So yeah, there are a few settings you'll need to put in place, but it's very easy to do those. Very simple menus to navigate, and the admins will find they have everything they need in place to put these settings into motion. So again, the contact center deploys quickly. How long it takes this, these features to put in place kind of depends on how many agents you have, of course, and how complex your call queue setup is, but very easy to put everything in place. So a few things that you'll notice here, the ability for you to add agents directly from Active Directory, rank them on various skills. You can set up your call queues, your business hours, the type of ring alerts, and if you're using skills-based routing, you can set that up as well. Adding the right welcome messages and the hold music, and we make it very easy to go in and in emergency or on the fly, change those quickly and change out welcome messages and record new ones. All very easy to manage that. And then lastly, this is just kind of an example, but you have the ability to assign organization roles to anyone in your contact center to make sure that everyone has the right features available to them. Whether that's a manager that you make or you give the access to only certain reports but not others. Maybe you have an agent that has basic permissions to view reports for some of their colleagues if they're given permission to do so. Maybe they're a supervisor agent. Maybe it's a trainee that doesn't have any functionality other than the ability to listen in to their colleagues' phone calls. So any feature in the contact center, any report that we generate, you have the ability to turn on or off for any individual as needed. So you can get very granular with the access given, and it also makes this incredibly easy to deploy to various regions and various locations if your contact center has more than one location. Okay, I think we're getting along pretty good here. Kind of getting towards the end of the technical data. I'm not going to go real deep into it. We are certainly on hand to assist with any of the setup as needed. So we have very intuitive manuals to help you with the setup. But if you hit any snags, you're welcome to reach out to us and we can help you walk through any of the setup criteria that needs to be put in place. Okay. A few other things I'm going to touch on. Often we get asked where Azure is located at. As of right now, while we are in public preview, we're working out of a centralized US Azure site right here in the US. However, as we go along and as we move to GA here shortly, we will be spinning up multiple Azure sites. And these are just a few examples of ones that are in motion already. The APAC region, of course, Europe and the UK, Canada, and South Africa, I'm sure, South America. Basically, wherever it's needed, it'll be easy for us to spin up an Azure site to basically guarantee that the information that is stored in Azure is not leaving the country of usage. And that'll be very helpful, as this is a product that will be available globally. Okay, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to touch on today. Again, that's not all inclusive, but that gives you a nice overview of the contact center, some of the features that we include, and the operation of the product. Once again, this is something that is in public preview. It is ready for you to set up in your environment and start testing today. So let us know if there's any other questions you have as you go through the testing process and any of the, as you're looking at your own contact center, if there's any special requirements or anything that you wanted to discuss, feel free to reach out to us and we can assist with that. One last thing, pricing. I'm sure that's everyone's next question. Very simple pricing structure, and I'll just kind of give you a rough idea. The product is licensed per user in your contact center, or rather, I should say, per named agent. Managers and admins are free of charge. You're only paying for your agents that are given permission to answer phone calls. We, as of right now, just for budgetary numbers, we are kind of zeroing in on a $75 per month per agent. 75 US dollars per month per agent, just for general pricing. Now, I say general pricing because depending on your agent count, that price may come down. So larger contact centers with higher agent count, obviously, that will be reflected in the pricing. But just for a starting figure, 75 US dollars per month per agent. There's no deployment fees. There's no ongoing support or annual support fees. All inclusive contact center, IVR setup, call recording, all the features we looked at are included within contact center at just $75 a month per agent. Okay, I think that is a wrap. Thanks again for considering the product, and please let us know if there's any other questions that come up. We are happy to assist, and we're excited to get this set up in your environment and get you rolling on contact center. Take care, everyone. Thank you.